All right. So here we are live again. I can't believe it's already been a week. This crazy COVID world. Um, so we wanted to talk today specifically about investing in e-commerce and how people should be thinking about investment in e-commerce. I know that that's a lot of the questions that I've been getting from people is how much do I spend and why do I spend it? So we are live with Becky McKinnell of iBec Creative and our e-commerce guru who's going to help us kind of think about e-commerce and brand and how you invest in it and get the most out of your investment, especially right now when every dollar counts for sure. So
Absolutely.
thanks so much for joining us again. I think this will be
All right.
fun. So I think particularly for companies looking at investing in e-commerce for the first time, I know that there's a lot of like small brands that maybe have been really dependent on restaurants or wholesalers to be their primary source of distribution. And now they're seeing supply chain issues and they need to invest in e-commerce for the first time. When somebody's doing that for the first time and kind of dipping their toe in the water, how do you have any tips about like how we maximize investment there?
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those like push and pull situations where you have to think about like what your capabilities are short term, like how much internal resources can you dedicate to this project, how much money can you dedicate to the project, and what do you need your e-commerce website to do right out of the gate, and then kind of like long term what your strategy is for like wish list, bells and whistles and capabilities, and kind of like your future vision for the platform. Because you want to make sure when you're deciding what company to work with or what technology to use that you have a, a pretty clear or vaguely clear image of what the next 3 years are going to look like for your e-commerce business, because you want to minimize any possibility of having to redo or rework or start over what you initially started as your like short-term e-commerce launch. So um, really being clear with everyone that you talk to about your goals for e-commerce site, whether it's with your internal team or with other vendors that are helping you like paint that picture of what the future looks like, so that all those short-term decisions that you're making are going to be good investments for you, and you don't have to start from scratch again when you get to the point where you need to really expand.
That's great. Are when once people have kind of made that initial investment, like let's say they have an established e-commerce presence and they're really seeing now as the time to like, okay, now our e-commerce sales are going up and we need to kind of like ramp up our game, that there's a little bit more competition or we're seeing more business. It feels like there's a bigger opportunity for brand touch points. Are there specific areas that people can like look to maximize investment that, like if I spend a dollar here, that it might go a little bit further than if I spend it somewhere else?
Yeah, I think that this sounds so basic, but just making sure that your website is functionally working and getting rid of any bugs or like weird UX experiences, like extra clicks that a customer has to make, or um, you know, information that's kind of like tucked in odd places that if it were just moved to, like for example, I'm thinking about like a product detail page on your website. If you have like shipping information on your shipping landing page, like how can you move that shipping information into your product detail page so
Hmm.
that you can increase your conversion rate on your product detail page? So like just kind of thinking about the basics, and like does your current website um, make it as easy as possible for someone to complete the checkout process, whether it's on mobile or on desktop, or with ADA compliance, like making sure that you've got your baseline covered before you go into building new features and functionality. I think that's really, where you're going to get the most bang for your buck is like focusing on functionality first.
Oh, that's such good advice because I think that usually when we're thinking about like ramping up our investment, we're thinking about adding bells and whistles to it as opposed to maybe even taking some things away, like removing layers or streamlining information. Do you want to say a little bit more about ADA compliance? Because I don't know if everybody knows how much that's changed or what they might need to be up to date with there. Is there, anything in particular that people should be paying attention to with that?
Yeah, so there's three levels of ADA compliance on the web. There's single A, double A, and triple A. And in most situations, you want to be striving for a double A compliance, which is like right in the middle, and it's very reasonable to do. The triple A compliance is very time consuming to do, and depending on what industry you're in, if you choose not to do AAA compliance, you want to have documentation on why you didn't go that extra step to make your site as compliant as possible. But there have been a lot of legal issues and people suing companies because their websites are not ADA compliant, which basically means that someone that's using a screen reader who's visually impaired or has another disability where they have to navigate your site in a non-traditional way, if they aren't able to experience the website in the same way, you're violating the ADA laws. So you should definitely be having conversations with your web company about what level of ADA they're going to be coding to. And in addition, your in-house person who is maintaining the website and adding new products, updating marketing messages, to make sure that they are understanding of what ADA compliance means on the website. So it could be simple things like when you have a new product and you're adding that new product to the website, you have to take the time to write a detailed alt text on that product image so that you're describing that image to someone that is unable to see the image. Another common mistake is when you have like a promotion or a sale banner, you might design text inside the image and then not take the time to describe what that text says. So when you upload that image, it's really important to be able to tag things and add all those descriptors so that you're not violating any ADA rules.
Yeah, so it sounds like there's a combination of making your site more accessible to people, but also a risk mitigation factor just to protect your company against any litigation risk.
Exactly. And, the added benefit of being ADA compliant is that it's also really good for search engine optimization because
Mm.
essentially search engines will read your website the same way a screen reader would. So you do have that as an added benefit of really taking ADA compliance seriously.
Yeah, that sounds like a huge added benefit, like good bang for your buck, where you're not only more accessible, you're diminishing risk, but you're also hopefully making yourself more visible to search engines, new customers. So yeah, that sounds like money definitely well spent. Um, is there any other kind of like feature or platform that you see people getting or companies getting particular value out of right now? Like anything like you know, a technology that you're like, ooh, this is like a really good bang for the buck.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that Shopify would kind of be my answer to that question for most cases. The three platforms that we're seeing the most of right now in e-commerce is Shopify, which is a third-party hosted platform. So you pay a monthly fee to Shopify, and then choose a Shopify template and customize that with your branding. The other option is WooCommerce, which is an extension for WordPress. So this can be a really good fit for companies that have e-commerce needs, but they also have the need to have really robust non-e-commerce pages on their website. So maybe they have like a really big blog or this like complicated and deep resource section of their website where a platform like Shopify is more limited in the functionality for that. So WordPress, again, is a great option for companies with WooCommerce. And then the third would be Magento. And that would be from the more sophisticated e-commerce site where you have a lot of complex products where customers can choose multiple sizes, colors, um, variations, and that all is like syncing back and forth with another like data feed or business system. Magento is a great tool for the complicated e-commerce sites.
Gotcha. Okay, cool. Um, that kind of dovetails nicely with something that I want to talk about a little bit, which is, a little bit more about what companies aren't thinking about when they're thinking about e-commerce. And for us, I mean, we're like, obviously we're brand strategy, we're positioning, we're always trying to help companies think about how they're creating value in their brand and connecting to customers. And I just think that e-commerce is such a good opportunity to do this in a very like concrete way, to really like live out your brand promise. And just hearing you talk about like Magento, if part of the way a company is creating value with their customer is allowing a lot of customization to the product, which is something that people like to have control over the product. So an idea that I could customize, size, fit, finish, all of those, multiple aspects of it. It feels like the selection of a platform might actually go directly into like, what do you want to be promising customers? That there's a piece of it that's your product and your catalog, but then also a piece of what are you promising and how are you delivering that to customers? Do you have any like thoughts about that? Or
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm just thinking about an example from the past, like when you have like one vision when you start with your e-commerce site where it's like very simple, and then as you get into it you learn more and have more sophisticated needs over time. That can be a situation where you really need to take a break and pause and rethink what you're currently building on so that you don't end up having to waste a lot of resources and start again. Like there are times where you just need to like cut bait and move in a different direction when your business has discovered a new opportunity with e-commerce. So I think always, like, you're not going to win fighting with technology. Like you want to pick the right tool and like have that be like uh, like a greasy slide for you to grow your e-commerce business, and not something that you're constantly fighting with and wasting internal resources and time with.
yeah, that's really interesting to kind of picture like what you want that experience to be and figure out the tool that's going to give you the least friction to get to that experience, basically. Um, yeah, and I think that the other thing too is for people to be thinking about like what are the things that customers really truly value in brands. And I think e-commerce is also a great opportunity for brands that specialize in curation to really show what they do well. So for example, going to a site where like everything they're showing you, it's like, oh, if you liked this, you might also like these other things. And I feel like sometimes you go and you have that experience and it's like, they clearly didn't put a lot of thought into this. Like there's some kind of algorithm that's working here, but these aren't related. Like, I don't like these other things. And then some where they do that well and you're like, oh my gosh, like every single thing here. Yes, I want it all. I was looking for this and I'm also looking for this. And really adding value through some of those tools that I think are like baked into some of the e-commerce sites, but we might not take seriously as brand opportunities, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think, giving customers different options depending on what their preferences are to experience your site. Like some customers might like to go the very logical, like women's shirts,
Mm.
long sleeve, and then like other ones just might want to search, um, like in the search field to find a specific product that they're looking for. And then other people might be more meandering and like really rely on the suggested products and just be more in a browsing mood. So you want to, not just be thinking about what your personal preferences are, but how all of your different customers are going to be shopping on your site.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because I know I'm definitely like the person who's like, show me Mother's Day gift ideas. Like, I don't know what I want here. And I really value sites that like help me with that, like help me make decisions. I'm the same way. Like, I don't like to like shop in like the big like TJ Maxx or Marshalls or whatever, because I can never like, there's so much stuff I can't find what I'm looking for. But I know friends of mine who love that challenge. Like, they love to find the deals or find exactly what they like, and that kind of like hunting through the racks is a piece of their experience. And so yeah, it's just interesting to think about. I don't know if I had actually thought about like different kinds of e-commerce shoppers in that way, but I'm sure that there would be a way to like categorize them and think about them as they come to your site.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny you say that, like, because I think it directly translates to e-commerce. Like, if you think of the e-commerce sites that have the, bar on the left or at the top where you can filter down and, select multiple check boxes and like really hunt and get to the exact product you're looking for, or, the people that are looking for a deal that just want to sort by price, low to high, and, you want to be able to offer all those options for how people's prefer to shop.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, have you any questions you've been hearing, or you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So when you're obviously a guide for many of your clients on how to navigate e-commerce, like what do you think that they should be thinking about when looking for a design partner for e-commerce, or looking for a team to help with their website?
Yeah, it's definitely one that we get a lot, and also, kind of struggle with ourselves to, try to find like the right partner for the right client. And I think for us, some of the like things that don't seem to work that well is if I feel like there's some firms that are really, really good at the tech piece of it. Like, they have lots of like tech geeks working for them, but unless you speak that language and can very, very clearly describe what you want, there there can just be like a real communication gap or a vision gap of like, you think you've described it, but like you haven't described it in their language. And then you end up with something that's not quite right. And I feel like that's something that just takes, especially complex e-commerce type projects, just like takes them off the rails. And then I feel like there's other companies who are like really good about the design and the UX experience, the UX of a site, and they get that piece of it, but then you have like a mess of a back end that is not sustainable, or they didn't pick the right technology. They picked whatever, they happen to have one person who had experience in Magento. So you got a Magento site, even though it's way overkill, or they stuck you in a Shopify site because that was what they knew how to work with when you really needed something that would handle more customization. So it's not like a long-term fit, or it's like wasted resources. Like, I see a lot of people in like bloated systems.
Mhm.
Um, so I think it's again kind of like helping companies find that sweet spot of, um, people who can be kind of like a partner and a guide and create, think about the human side of e-commerce, exactly like you were describing, of like, who are our shoppers and what is the experience we want and how do we create that experience? And then also the tech geeks, kind of engineer types who are like, ooh, I'll geek out for hours on like the exact best way to do that work. And I think, for a lot of companies, it's like there's not, there's also just a piece of like, maybe a company might have a particular experience that they can leverage that might be particular to their industry or something like that. But I think for the most part, it's a lot less about that than it is about just making sure that you have those two sides balanced, kind of like the tech side and the human side. Yeah, I think it's one of the reasons why, I know you weren't baiting me with the question, but I think it's definitely one of the reasons why we enjoy working with you guys and why we feel like you're such a good partner, because it's, you do get the human creative side and easy to talk to, but also like can talk about ADA compliance, which I don't know a lot about. So
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, I definitely hear you. I think one of the things that I've learned over time, even in how like we've changed our project management and flow at iBec, is like the more you can get the person coding your website in the conversation as early as possible, like something that they, hear offhand in a meeting may have a drastic impact on how the site is coded, and affect future scalability. So definitely having a transparent relationship with the developer, I think, is super important too.
yeah, that's a really good point, because I think people are often still I feel like it was kind of an old school model to think about it very linearly. Like, we design it in Photoshop, and then once we have the design ready, then we hand it off to the developers. And it's a totally different model right now on the development side, right? Like, it's not linear anymore.
Yeah, I think the more like things can, like early development can start, and more of like prototyping with design and having more kind of collaboration to get a product completed faster rather than that something completed faster that then you build on, versus the waterfall, like make it perfect and then launch. It's definitely more the trend.
Yeah, yeah, and I think people would really relate to that, because everybody's been, I'm sure, burned by some web project that goes out years and years, and by the time you actually get it launched, it's like outdated.
Yeah.
That like speed to market and getting feedback on things, I think, for almost everything these days is really critical, but especially in tech. So yeah.
What do
And
you think about like metrics and when the website's launched, or even during the design process, like what should companies be thinking about for what success looks like and how they'll know that they've done a good job with their site?
yeah, so this is something, I mean, obviously, like, we're on the strategy side of things, so we always want data and really value the metrics piece of it and kind of envisioning what success looks like. But kind of similar to the way you were just talking about development, I also feel like companies need to be thinking about success metrics as continuous improvement. So again, not looking at like, oh, we need to have X number of hits or sales or whatever, and more about like, let's get a beta, a baseline established, and then let's be using data from the back end of the site to be able to understand where can we find improvement and where kind of like the pinch points that could unleash more potential in the site. So for example, like trying to find places where you have an extremely high abandonment rate and then do some testing to figure out how do you lower that. And I think because there can be so many levers that can affect some of those things, sometimes it's like the photo makes a big difference. Sometimes it's adding a video, sometimes it's updating a description, and sometimes it's like a technical experience thing. And then sometimes it just might be like the product or the price or shipping costs or whatever. And so there's so many variables that I think it's again, I think companies who take like too of a black and white view on success metrics of like, oh, if we hit X, that's success, and aren't constantly really having their teams look at the site and just look for any opportunity to increase sales. That's how you can really get an e-commerce site to not only pay for itself, but to have a huge return, is if you're really constantly paying attention to that and looking for any opportunity. Like all of a sudden, a product might start really doing well and you need to figure out why, and is there something going on there that you can apply somewhere else. Um, so I think again, just making sure like at least quarterly you have some specific metrics that you're looking at and you have a team that is experienced enough and has enough like time and flexibility to go around and do some digging and testing to really figure out how to either increase success or like find problem points and fix them.
Mhm. Yeah, like there's when I think about like a brand new website launching, bounce rate and average time on site are two metrics that I think you can count on. Like, did we do a good job on this? Like, are
Yeah.
people engaged? Are they browsing around? And then like getting in, like you were saying, with cart abandonment and cost per acquisition, and really looking into the ongoing metrics that you'll need to benchmark and continuously improve on over time. It's so key. You can't have an e-commerce site without being dialed into the numbers.
Yeah. And are do you guys have like are there particular like third party tools that you use to look at those numbers on your end, or do you rely on kind of like what's built into the system or
Yeah, so Google Analytics for sure,
Mhm.
but we've been using Dash This as another third-party tool to kind of bring together what's happening in Google Analytics and what's happening on social and ad campaigns to get like a more thorough overview of the performance of the site, and that's been really helpful.
Cool, great tip. All right, I think that was some great tools and tips and insights, so thank you so much for doing this, and I will see you next week.
Sounds great.
All right, awesome. Thank you so much, Becky. Have a great day.
You too,
Bye.
Megan.